honored members of the fire caste, diligent water caste, innovative earth caste, and faithful air caste, I speak to you today as we face a rising storm upon the stars. A threat so vast, so insidious, that it defies the limits of comprehension. A scourge known to the galaxy as the Tyranids. These beings, like the ravenous crute hound stalking its prey in the wilderness, seek not simply to conquer, but to devour all that lives. They are not beings of diplomacy, nor are they warriors that can be reasoned with. They are a race that embodies the raw, primal hunger of life itself, stripped of any higher cause or purpose beyond consumption and replication. It is this existential threat to our Tau Empire that we must now come to understand. For in knowledge we shall find the path to our salvation. I speak to you not merely to instill fear, for the greater good demands that we face all threats with clear minds and resolute hearts. Rather, it is my duty to illuminate the truth of the Tyranid menace, to delve deep into their nature, their origins, and their biology, that we may best understand how to resist their onslaught. We must arm ourselves with knowledge if we are to preserve our way of life and ensure that the stars do not fall to these devourers of worlds. The Tyranid race, unlike any other encountered by our empire, does not adhere to the structures of civilization, politics, or culture that we have come to understand as universal truths of sentient life. Instead, they are more akin to a single organism, with every individual Tyranid functioning as a mere cell within a larger, galaxy-spanning entity known as the hive-mind. It is from this centralized intelligence that all Tyranids draw their purpose, and it is through this collective will that their terrifying reproduction cycle is orchestrated. The birth of a Tyranid begins with the landing of a hive fleet on a target world, an event that heralds the doom of that planet. At the vanguard of every invasion are the vast bioships, titanic living vessels that house the swarm. These bioships, pulsating with life and directed by the will of the hive mind, deploy countless spores into the atmosphere of the target planet. These spores, designed with adaptive versatility, immediately begin to infest the environment, spreading tendrils into the soil and atmosphere, siphoning resources from the very air and earth. Once enough biomass has been secured, specialized reproductive forms, known as Norn queens, initiate the birthing process. It is through these colossal queens that the hive fleet produces new Tyranids in staggering numbers, each form tailored specifically to its function within the swarm, be it a warrior, a scout, or a monstrous beast of war. The adaptability of the Tyranid reproductive cycle is one of its most terrifying aspects. The Norn queens, under the guidance of the hive mind, possess the ability to alter the genetic material of their progeny based on the demands of the situation. If the swarm encounters heavily armored opponents, more bioforms equipped with piercing talons or acidic weaponry will be created. If resistance is highly mobile, the hive mind will create swift, agile creatures to close the distance with ease. This biological flexibility ensures that the Tyranids are never locked into a static form. They learn from their encounters, altering their physiology on a genetic level to overcome any obstacle. But what makes the Tyranid life cycle particularly dangerous is not simply its efficiency or adaptability, it is its scale. A single spore can give rise to millions of Tyranid organisms in a matter of days, each one crafted for a specific purpose, each one fully subservient to the greater whole. Once a planet has been entirely stripped of biomass, the remnants of the swarm are reabsorbed into the bioships, their genetic materials stored and repurposed for the next invasion. Thus, the swarm grows ever larger, ever stronger, feeding on the very essence of life to perpetuate itself. As with much in the galaxy, the true origins of the Tyranid race remain shrouded in mystery, though certain hypotheses have emerged from various sources. The Imperium of Man, with whom we have had our share of conflicts, speaks of the Tyranids as extragalactic in origin, creatures not native to our galaxy but invaders from the dark void beyond. This theory is supported by the sheer scale of their invasions and the apparent lack of any significant history of their presence in the galactic records prior to their initial sightings in the late years of the 41st millennium. It is believed that the Tyranids consumed entire galaxies before their tendrils reached our own, arriving in waves, each hive fleet representing a new incursion. Regardless of their precise origins, the Tyranid threat to the Tau Empire is unmistakable. Unlike our conflicts with the Orcs, whose brutish nature allows for some degree of tactical prediction, or the Imperium, whose rigid structures make them slow to adapt, the Tyranids are ever shifting, constantly evolving. There is no negotiating with the hive mind, no possibility of peace or cooperation. Where the Tyranids go, annihilation follows. They do not merely conquer or enslave, they consume everything. For the Tau, a species that values unity, expansion, and the prosperity of the greater good, the Tyranid menace strikes at the very heart of our purpose. Where we seek to bring order, harmony, and advancement to the galaxy, the Tyranids represent chaos, dissolution, and primal hunger. Their arrival threatens to undo the carefully constructed web of alliances, protectorates, and colonies that make up our empire. Of particular concern is the Tyranids' ability to adapt and evolve rapidly in response to their enemies. Every time we have faced them, they have grown stronger, more resistant to our weaponry, and more cunning in their assaults. While our forces have achieved notable victories against the Hive fleets, these battles have come at a great cost. The Tyranids are unrelenting. For every swarm we defeat, 2 more seem to rise in its place. If we are to ensure the survival of our empire, we must constantly adapt our strategies, improve our technology, and work ever more closely as a unified whole. The threat is not simply military, however. The Tyranids' tendency to strip entire worlds of their biomass poses a unique challenge to the Tau. Unlike the destructive nature of warfare between other species, which leaves behind usable resources, the Tyranids leave nothing. Their presence reduces vibrant, life-sustaining planets to barren husks, devoid of all organic material. As a growing empire, reliant on new worlds to support our population and expansion, the arrival of a hive fleet can lead to catastrophic resource shortages and the loss of vital infrastructure. Moreover, the psychological impact on our people cannot be ignored. We are a species founded on the ideals of cooperation, mutual benefit, and the hope for a brighter future. The Tyranids represent a nightmare in which these ideals are rendered meaningless. They offer no opportunity for dialogue, no chance to incorporate them into the greater good. The sheer horror of their relentless, mindless hunger threatens to shake the very foundations of our collective spirit. Yet we must stand firm. We must trust in the greater good to guide us through this dark time. And we must be prepared to meet the Tyranid threat with all the strength, wisdom, and ingenuity our people possess. The fear that the Tyranids invoke in the hearts of all sentient beings is not merely a reaction to their overwhelming numbers or their horrifying adaptability. It is something more primal, something that transcends the logic of strategy or tactics. The true horror of the Tyranids lies in their utter negation of the principles that guide all life, sentient or otherwise. They embody a cold, inescapable truth of the universe: survival at any cost, without morality, without higher purpose. In the face of such a force, all that we hold dear seems fragile and fleeting. Firstly, the Tyranids are terrifying because they are not a race in the conventional sense. They do not have personalities, culture, art, or individuality. Every other threat the Tau Empire has faced, whether it be the Orcs, the Gwella, or even the Necrons, carries with it some form of identity, some element that we can understand or even respect. In each of these other races, there is a glimmer of self-interest, a desire to survive, to conquer, or to expand their influence. But the Tyranids? They are utterly alien in their motivations. They do not want territory or resources for any purpose beyond the immediate and all-consuming need to devour. This lack of identity, of individuality, creates a faceless, formless terror that strikes at the very foundation of our understanding of life and civilization. Even more disturbing is the fact that the Tyranids never stop. Their hunger is unending, their assault inexhaustible. Where other enemies can be reasoned with, defeated, or even befriended, the Tyranids provide no such options. Their desire to consume is insatiable. For the Tau, whose vision of the greater good is predicated on the belief that peace and cooperation are achievable, this concept is deeply unsettling. The Tyranids present us with an enemy that cannot be convinced of anything, an entity that will never cease in its pursuit of destruction. They are the physical manifestation of entropy, an ever-hungry force that exists solely to strip away the light and life from the universe. The biological horrors that the Tyranids unleash upon the battlefield are a further source of terror. The warriors of the Firecast have encountered many forms of warfare, but even the ferocity of the orcs or the mechanical precision of the Necrons pales in comparison to the organic onslaught of the Tyranid swarm. Imagine, if you will, facing a creature that is the perfect predator, its claws and teeth shaped not by evolution over millennia, but by a conscious will to make it the most efficient killer possible. And now imagine facing not one, but thousands of these creatures, each one slightly different from the next, each one learning from your every action, adapting, evolving, and becoming stronger with every passing moment. In addition to their physical prowess, the Tyranids possess the ability to overwhelm their enemies psychologically. The presence of the hive mind is palpable, a psychic pressure that bears down on all who stand before it. Our scholars have studied the effects of this presence, and they have found that it causes even the most stalwart of warriors to experience a deep sense of dread and hopelessness. To fight the Tyranids is to fight a foe that seems to be everywhere at once, their very minds clouding your thoughts, their presence suffocating your resolve. It is no wonder that many warriors across the galaxy have been driven to madness when facing the Tyranids in battle. The final and perhaps most horrifying aspect of the Tyranids is their adaptability. Every defeat they suffer makes them stronger. Every weapon we deploy against them is analyzed and countered in the future. This relentless evolution makes them seem invincible, as if no matter how many battles we win, the ultimate victory is always slipping further out of reach. For a civilization like ours, which prides itself on its technological superiority and strategic acumen, this ability to adapt so quickly presents a terrifying challenge. We must constantly evolve our tactics, constantly develop new technologies, or risk being overrun by a foe that learns from its every mistake. To sum up, the horror of the Tyranids is not just physical but existential. They are a race that defies the principles of sentient life, of reason, of hope. They do not seek to coexist. They do not desire victory in the conventional sense. They are hunger incarnate, a force of nature that seeks only to consume and grow. In the face of such a threat, we must be ever vigilant, ever adaptive, and above all, united in our commitment to the greater good. For if we falter, if we allow fear or despair to take root in our hearts, then the Tyranids will not just destroy us, they will erase all that we are, all that we have built, and all that we could become. And now we arrive at a question that has intrigued some within the Earth caste and even the more daring among the Water caste. Can the Tyranids be manipulated, controlled, or perhaps even repurposed for the greater good? On the surface, this idea may seem preposterous. The Tyranids, after all, are a race bound entirely to the will of the hive mind. Their every action, every adaptation, and every evolution is dictated by a consciousness far beyond our understanding. However, as our knowledge of their biology has grown, so too has the realization that their strength may also be their vulnerability. It is known that the hive mind maintains control over its swarms through a series of psychic resonances. Disrupt these signals, and the cohesion of the swarm begins to fray. Without the direction of the hive mind, individual Tyranid bioforms revert to a more primal state, driven purely by base instincts. There have been documented instances where hive fleet synapse creatures, the psychic leaders of the swarm, were killed, causing lower bioforms to descend into disarray. Could we then find a way to harness this vulnerability? One possibility, raised by our brightest minds, is the development of technologies capable of interfering with or hijacking the synaptic signals of the hive mind. If we could create devices that emit false psychic frequencies, we might be able to control smaller bioforms, using them as weapons against their own kind. Imagine, if you will, a swarm of Tyranid creatures turned against their masters, fighting for the greater good rather than the consumption of all life. Such a prospect is tantalizing, but it also presents immense risks. The hive mind is cunning, and it is likely that any attempt to control its brood would be met with fierce countermeasures. Another avenue that has been considered is the potential to bioengineer certain Tyranid organisms for our own use. The Earth caste has already achieved incredible feats of biological and technological fusion, from the development of advanced drones to the creation of genetically augmented warriors. Could we not, then, apply these techniques to the bioforms of the Tyranids, stripping away their more dangerous traits and repurposing them for peaceful or defensive applications? While this is a promising idea, it remains fraught with challenges. Tyranid DNA is notoriously mutable, and any attempt to manipulate it risks triggering unforeseen mutations or even creating new threats. Ultimately, while the manipulation of Tyranid bioforms may offer some potential for the advancement of the greater good, it is a path that must be tread with the utmost caution. The Tyranids are not mere beasts to be tamed. They are the embodiment of hunger, a force of nature that seeks to consume all in its path. Any attempt to harness their power carries the risk of unleashing even greater destruction upon ourselves. As we face the Tyranid threat, we must remain steadfast in our commitment to the greater good. These creatures, born of a hunger that knows no bounds, represent one of the greatest challenges our empire has ever faced. But we are the Tau, a species united in purpose, guided by wisdom, and driven by the desire to bring harmony to the galaxy. Though the Tyranids may be relentless, we too shall be unyielding in our defense of our empire and our ideals. By understanding the nature of this enemy, by adapting our strategies, and by exploring all avenues of research and innovation, we shall overcome this menace. For the greater good, we must stand as one against the darkness, and in doing so, we shall ensure that the light of the Tau Empire continues to shine brightly across the stars.